I point out the irony that someone who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, who dressed up in hideous racist costumes so many times he says he can't remember them all, should then be the arbiter on what constitutes hate.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Pierre Poilievre was in Kitchener, Ontario today, continuing his campaign against Justin and his Liberal government. And man, was Pierre firing from both barrels today. But before we get to that, we have an update from the Standing Committee on Government Operations and the vote to bring in GC Strategies founder Christian Firth and Darren Anthony back to committee.
So, what happened today? As expected, the Liberals filibustered for another hour or 2 hours, whatever it was. It was a long time, man. And, but luckily, they were actually able to get through it. And what we learned is Bloc MP Vignola, she actually was doing some finagling behind the scenes between the NDP and the Conservatives and the Liberals to try to figure out a way to actually get this motion forward. So what her suggestion was, not her suggestion, what it came down to was they were going to put in an amendment that that the chair and members of some of the members of the Standing Committee of Government Operations would adjourn to a subcommittee to talk about what possible accommodations, if any, to grant to Christian Firth and Darren Anthony in order for them to come to committee. Now, the accommodations would only be allowed if they were able to produce documentation from medical professionals that they actually required accommodations in the first place. So that sounds all well and good. However, Michael Barrett had a serious problem with that, because one of the things that happens when committee adjourns to a subcommittee is A, not all members are present, and B, that's in camera.
All of it.
So it's behind the scenes, we don't get to see it, and they don't get to talk about what happens in there in public either. So his concern is what could happen is that the Liberals start, putting forth political shenanigans to the point of, well, if you can't agree on an accommodation, well, then they can't come to committee then, can they? And then that can't even be talked about outside of committee. So there were some serious concerns over that sneaky little move that the Liberals were able to get into that amendment. But the good news is that the NDP and the Bloc ended up saying, well, we're not having any of that. If there's any of that starts happening, there's always an option of having a motion to be put forward to bring it out of that committee and into the public. And the other thing that they were able to force the Liberals to agree upon is right at the outset, the motion would state that the testimony of Christian Firth and Darren Anthony would be public. Because, again, one of the other concerns of the Conservatives and Michael Barrett was that what if one of the accommodations was that the testimony had to be provided in camera, so it wouldn't be made public at all, and then it would disappear. So the good news is where this motion landed is that they will be summoned. They have to come within 21 days. If they do not, then they will be arrested by way of the Sergeant at Arms and law enforcement. And if they require accommodation, then committee will determine what that accommodation is between now and the end of that 21 days. And then they will come and testify in public. That's what this does. So the Liberals were able to delay it for a day, but they were not able to wiggle their way out of this.
And it really makes me wonder why they were so against having them brought in by the Sergeant at Arms. Like, why? That is your prerogative as a parliamentary committee. Why would you not exercise that right?
And the only thing that you can say is, well, you're hiding something, and you're hiding something really bad that you wanted to set a precedent that people could ignore coming to committee. So the good news is that the NDP and the Bloc weren't having any of that. They said, no, we need to be able to have some teeth. We need to be able to summon people to committee, whether they want to come or not, which is why both the Bloc and the NDP were in support of this motion. So very good news on the opposition front. Anyhow, let's get to Pierre.
We've seen locally some tension building between post-secondary institutions around the international student cap.
Right.
We're hearing now that pressure is mounting against the feds to walk that back. What are your thoughts on that?
Thank you. Great question. After 8 years of Trudeau, our entire immigration system is ruined. We used to have the best immigration system in the world, across the board. Permanent, temporary, international students, temporary foreign workers, all of our programs were the best in the world. In fact, they were studied in other countries. Why is it such a success? Why does Canada have so much immigration with so little division? Why is it so uncontroversial, is what people asked up until 8 years ago. But then Trudeau, through his total incompetence, opened the floodgates in a way that was disconnected from the number of homes to house people and the amount of jobs to employ them. And as a result, the Barrie Bylaw Office discovered there were 25 international students living in the basement of one home. International students live under bridges and on street corners. They're sold into prostitution and gangs. Some go home in body bags. This is the nightmare that Justin Trudeau has unleashed. A common sense conservative government will ensure that if someone comes as an international student, they have to be registered for a real educational institution that offers a real certificate. 2, they have to prove that they have the income to pay their bills while they are here. 3, they have to prove that they have homes. And finally, we'll have a mathematical formula that links population growth to the growth in the supply of housing. The only way to eliminate the housing shortage is to add homes faster than we add people. And when I will be removing bureaucracy to build the homes and setting immigration levels so that our housing stock outgrows our population. That's common sense.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, there's the answer. There's the answer a lot of you have been asking. When is Pierre going to tie immigration to housing? Boom. Right there. And you're gonna see some other answers in this press conference today that Fox and I were shocked to hear.
Shocked.
Like,
maybe not that shocked, but
we were very surprised. Not the content of the answers, but that he was giving the answer.
it's kind of stuff we've suspected he was going to say all along, but hasn't been able to say up until now. Which again begs the question: why can he say it now?
Right. We're still a little under 2 years away from the next scheduled election.
Why would he say stuff like this? Well, you know what? We'll just show you.
Good morning, Mr. Polyev. David Menzies with Rebel News. Mr. Polyev, for the last few years, our news organization has been covering what can only be described as a war on women. Biological males are pretending to be females, and these men are invading female safe spaces. This includes female sports ranging from volleyball to rugby. As well, men pretending to be women are gaining access to female shelters and even female prisons. This has collectively led to real women and girls being emotionally abused, physically injured, and my question, sir, is should you form the next federal government, will you make female safe spaces safe again by introducing legislation that bans so-called transgender women from participating in female sports and getting access into female shelters and female prisons?
Okay, so that part where the video cut out, that wasn't us. That was CPAC because of YouTube's restrictions. And what David Menzies said was, I'll give you the acronym SA. as
Yeah,
it
so
relates
these
to an
women
offense on women.
Were assaulted.
Yes.
You can figure out what the S stands for.
Yeah. So we also can't say it because YouTube is very, very picky about those types of phrases. So, but I'm sure you know what that means. Anyhow, this is a very provocative question. It's from Rebel News, from David Menzies.
It's so provocative that CPAC had to mute a section of it.
And you even saw the CPAC cameraman zoom in on Pierre Poilievre to see if there was going to be any reaction from him. And he was as cool as a mountain lake listening to that question. So here's his answer.
Female spaces should be exclusively for females, not for biological males. You asked if I introduced legislation on that. A lot of the spaces you described are provincially and municipally controlled. So it is unclear what federal legislation what reach federal legislation would have to change them. But obviously, female sports, female change rooms, female bathrooms should be for females, not for biological males.
That is so surprising that he came out to directly answer that as directly as he did.
Yeah, especially with all the activists going on and on about how, conservatives are transphobes and Pierre is a transphobe and just everybody hates everybody else, like just ridiculous stuff. Just saying that biological men do not belong in women's spaces, I want to say it used to be controversial, but it kind of still is, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's something else. But here's the thing. Pierre wouldn't have said this 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
No, so why is he saying this now? Like, if an election was 2 years away, do you think he would say something like this, where the NDP and the Liberals can both like chastise him and hang him out to dry in the media about that topic?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense if an election was, just under 2 years away.
And you can't be like, oh, he doesn't care anymore. To a degree, that may be correct, but he needs to care because he needs votes to win, right? He needs votes in order to become prime minister. If he didn't need those votes, then sure, you could say he didn't care. But he needs those votes. So up until now, he's been extremely careful. What's changed?
Well, the interesting thing is, after the press conference where he talked about puberty blockers, his ratings went up.
Because something like 80% of Canadians don't think children should be given access to very severe life-altering drugs like that, and also surgery.
And here's an interesting effect, a very interesting effect, that Pierre talking about this is going to have. It's going to give other people the courage to also talk about it.
Oh, absolutely it will.
This is, the fact that Pierre is saying this, this is a huge deal. It's not just a huge deal for, that there might be an election. Forget the election. This is a huge deal because anyone in any school, in any workplace, in any type of venue outside of the federal government that says this right now, their life is over. And it's not that there is a mob of people that come after them. It's the fact that the institutions that they belong to, the businesses that they belong to, are so afraid of the radical left coming after them that they then go after these people. So the fact that Pierre is saying this, it's going to give other people the courage to stand up. So even just for that, we need to really applaud Pierre on taking a stand here, because this shouldn't be a debate.
He doesn't care anymore. He's saying the right thing, and he doesn't care what Trudeau or Singh have to say about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Good morning, Mr. Poilievre. Andrew Lawton, True North. The federal government has said that its online harms bill is imminent. They've said this bill will include, among other things, a ban on so-called online hate speech. As you know, the Conservatives a decade ago repealed Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act, which the Liberals have talked about reintroducing and tried in the last parliamentary term. Will the Conservatives oppose the reintroduction of these provisions and the Liberals' approach to so-called online hate speech?
Yes. we will oppose Justin Trudeau's latest attack on freedom of expression. And I want to ask, what does Justin Trudeau mean when he says the word hate speech? He means speech he hates. So, for example, let's go through some of the things he said is hate speech. Jerry Butts, the PMO puppet master, said that it was hate speech to criticize Trudeau for using the ridiculous term people kind, right? Justin Trudeau said anyone who criticized him during the pandemic was engaging in hate speech. Basically, anybody who disagrees with his radical agenda when it comes to kids, he says is hate speech. He attacked Muslim parents who were protesting against his agenda. Is he going to criminalize those Muslim parents for protecting their children in schools? Go down the list of things that Justin Trudeau disapproves of, and you can imagine all of the things that will be criminalized. And then there becomes the question of who is going to be in charge of determining what is hate speech. Recently, a school board in Ontario banned Anne Frank's books. Okay, so would that be considered hate speech under Justin Trudeau's woke authoritarian agenda? I think it would. So anyone who thinks that speech they don't like is going to be criminalized and therefore the bill should be supported, go through that. Those people should go through the list of their own thoughts that Justin Trudeau considers to be unacceptable views, and you can assume that he will ban all of that as well. And finally, I point out the irony that someone who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, who dressed up in hideous racist costumes so many times he says he can't remember them all, should then be the arbiter on what constitutes hate. Why doesn't he? What he should actually do is look into his own heart and ask himself why he was such a hateful racist. For despite his enormous personal privileges of a multi-million-dollar trust fund, being the son of a prime minister, growing up in mansions, traveling the world, why he had so much hate in his heart that he was such an awful racist. And what he should do is actually explain where that ugliness came from, and maybe in that way, rather than through coercion, he could help us all in the fight against real hate.
Holy crap.
That was very clever right there at the end, where Pierre is pretty much telling Canadians, look at this guy. He's so filthy rich. He had $1 million trust fund. He grew up as the son of a prime minister. He traveled the world. And look how racist he is, or was, however you want to say it. Point being, he's juxtaposing this entitled rich kid attitude, like, none of us will ever see the kind of money that his family had. That's just reality. And then saying, and look how he behaved as this hateful, racist person. He's making you hate him on two fronts.
I'm stunned at how much Pierre is unloading on Trudeau here. Like, he is going for the jugular. Like, it's like Trudeau's down for the count and Pierre climbs on top of him and is still hitting him. Like, he is mauling him in the public sphere right now. Like, he called him a racist like 4 or 5 different times.
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy, folks. 2 years away from an election? Come on.
Good morning. Carmen Gorillo with CBC, and if you could answer in English and in French. I have a question on behalf of my colleagues in Ottawa. Does the committee need to also hear from the 2 senior public servants currently suspended amid the RCMP contracting investigation?
Yes, absolutely. The committee needs to hear from the suspended public servants. It needs to hear from all of the contractors who were directly or indirectly involved in this scandal. It needs to hear from all of the consultants that have been paid exorbitant sums to do absolutely no work. We need to bring in everybody, and Conservatives will err on the side of transparency, and we are prepared to sit all day and all night to keep the hearings going, the testimony under oath happening so that Canadians can get the truth and we can find out where's the funds.
That was meant to scare the bejesus out of the Liberals. Right there. That's what that was intended to do.
Well, yeah, because as we've said, the Conservatives intend on continuing with continuing these investigations even after the Liberal government is gone.
Right. So it's almost like he's trying to scare Justin Trudeau into proroguing Parliament, which would be that would be the end, because there would have to be an election called right after that. There's no way the NDP could continue supporting the Trudeau government after proroguing Parliament to get out of committee investigations, as many as there are into the corruption right now. There's no way. So it's an interesting move here. And it sounds, we may be wrong, folks, but it sounds like we're like really close to the end. It really sounds that way.
And I know a lot of people have been saying, oh, well, Jagmeet's waffling about the pharmacare thing. I don't know. I think he's just trying to save face. I think he's trying not to play his hand. He's trying to play poker and not show his cards, but he really, really sucks at it. But he's still trying not to show everybody what his moves are.
And he has until April 21st before he has to call an election to meet the boundary change deadlines. So it's going to be a really interesting March and April. And every day we're going to be on pins and needles like the rest of you. But here's the good news. This is the good news, folks. If we don't have a spring election, it gets better for the Conservatives.
Yeah, they'll automatically get, 4 extra seats that are pulling Conservative. 4 out of the 6 new ones are expected to be Conservative. Plus a bunch of current ones that are either held by NDP or Liberal will turn blue just by the fact that the boundary is being redrawn.
Yeah, so just kind of wrap your mind around this. We want a spring election just to get Trudeau out of office as soon as possible. But that's the worst case scenario for the Conservatives right now. They have held these numbers for over a year. Okay? So it's been established by the pollsters and the political strategists with the NDP and with the Liberals that they're not going anywhere. Not unless there's a major mess up. And you better believe that the Liberals and the NDP are getting even more worried because of the fact that Pierre is now speaking out on the LGBTQ plus issues, and he's gaining support. They have to be terrified of that fact, because that would have been the only issue that they were hoping that they could get him on.
Well, and all this calling him bigoted or sexist or racist or whatever in the media, it's not working.
All it's doing is playing into Pierre's narrative about Trudeau, which is he divides Canadians to distract. Because what he's saying is, when Trudeau calls me that, he's calling you that too, because you share the same views. When Pierre talks about Trudeau, he doesn't lump in the rest of the Liberal voters. He's only talking about Trudeau, because he's specifically talking about Trudeau in things that Trudeau has said, in things that Trudeau has said about other Canadians, in things that Trudeau has personally done. So you can't actually apply that to Liberal voters. Whereas when Trudeau says what Pierre says here is bigoted, well, he's saying what 80% of other Canadians already think. So you better believe that they're terrified that the polls aren't going down, they're going up, as Pierre is saying more. Even on the immigration side as well, they thought, oh, well, as soon as he ties immigration to housing, everyone's going to get him. Nope. Because everybody understands it. And everyone is attunely aware of the housing problem, and you can't add more people with no houses. That's just simple math, and everybody understands that. So all of the issues that they're hoping to get him on, it's not working. So the worst case scenario for the Conservatives is you go now. The best case for the Conservatives is you go after April 22nd. So that's That's the thing to consider in all of this.
Good morning, Mr. Boliev, Man Hamidou, the Canadian Press. Do you believe Parliament should make it law that pornography websites have to verify the ages of users so minors can't access their material? And would a future government of yours do this?
Yes.
Well, I appreciate the straightforward answer, Pierre. We disagree with you on this.
Yeah, absolutely we do. However, before we get into why, I do want to point out that the reporter just asked if they would make it law for users to have to verify their age. Right now, if you go onto an adult content website, it asks you, are you over the age of 18? And you go, yep.
That's verification.
That's it. That's verification, which it does now. So somebody on Reddit was making that argument that maybe it's not necessarily talking about Bill S-210, but it's just talking about checking that box and saying, yeah, I'm 18.
Well, I think it's semantics, but when you're talking about verify, it all depends. If Pierre is talking about S210, sorry Pierre, we disagree with you on this.
We do disagree, and you can check out our video on why we disagree.
Yeah, we'll put that in the description for those, because we know that at least a few of you were asking about this, so we'll put that in the description. But we disagree with it, and the reason why, in summary, that we disagree with it is because it's government overreach into the family household. You need to be expecting parents to be parents, and two, you really want to trust the government to connect to outside organizations providing your personal information, and you want to trust that that's not going to be potentially compromised, and then your personal adult entertainment preferences possibly stolen, leaked, and then ransomed on the internet. This can destroy lives, folks.
Yeah, this is not good news. And to me, it's like if I go to the liquor store and buy a bottle of vodka, let's say, and I keep it in the house, my kid could have access to it. It's my job as a parent to make sure he does not have access to it. It's the same thing with the internet. If I bring the internet into our home, I am responsible for keeping it safe for our son.
100%. And here's the other thing. So what about rated R movies where there's adult content in there?
What about Game of Thrones?
How are you going to do that? Yeah, like it's like what? Are you going to hold HBO accountable and go after them criminally and fine them if an 8-year-old watches Game of Thrones at home? I don't think so. Because like, what do you then have to do? You have to implement all this for Crave. You have to implement all this for Netflix. You have to implement, this on VCRs, which is impossible. Like that, it's untenable.
It goes to the point of absurdity.
So, we don't need the government in our homes and in our business and compromising anonymity and people's right to browse the internet and free expression. Like, do we want to protect kids? Yeah. So make sure the parents do their jobs.
And we just want to point out that although we are vehemently opposed to Bill S-210, we're still planning on voting Conservative. This shows that you may not agree with absolutely everything a party does. And in fact, you probably won't agree with every single thing a party does or wants to support. However, when you agree with the vast majority of what they are trying to do, that's the party you need to vote for. And on the stuff you don't agree with, write your MP, write the leader of the party, tell them, I don't agree with this, and this is why.
And if you do find yourself agreeing with absolutely everything, challenge yourself, because you don't want to fall into an ideological trap where you are voting for a party just because it's the party. Question it, challenge it, and make yourself an informed voter, because an informed voter is the most dangerous constituent to any government that there is.
As the quote from V for Vendetta goes, people should not be afraid of their government. Government should be afraid of their people.